Hey, this is John Craig, and welcome for another edition of Walking in Spirit and Truth. And it's really good to be part of your evening today. I'm trying to get my camera just to get reset a little bit. My goodness, has it been a week? Boy, we've had 2 weekends where I hope that you've been able to enjoy some time off, and Sandy and I had an opportunity to be together for a nice little long weekend, which is good because it was our anniversary weekend. So that was a good thing to do. But nevertheless, you are watching tonight, Walking in Spirit and Truth. And my name is John Craig, and my wife and I pastor Life of Worship Ministries here in Amarillo, Texas. And all I can say is it's been a whirlwind. And we're looking forward to these next steps in Ezra, for Ezra. I hope you guys have been enjoying that. I mean, there's been so much that's been involved in for Ezra, and we kind of left it at a cliffhanger last week. So we're going to pick it up where we left off. I hope you're ready for that today. So, so I'm going to, but I've got some other stuff. I got to get both Bibles open. That's all I have to say. I got to get both Bibles ready, both ready to go. And we're going to get talking about it. By the way, I want to say thank you so much, those people that have been partnering with us at Life of Worship, both in prayers and financially. Certainly appreciate that. And we have a new month. It's been a challenge the last few months, and I think it's because of a lot of different reasons, and I think it was because there's challenges in everybody's finances because of the inflation and the things that people are dealing with. And so those that have been able to say, yeah, I can help out, or I've been listening for a long time, and I've been gleaning off of the information and the word and the life that comes out of these streams with Life of Worship, and you have stepped up, and you have been able to step in and help us out, and send an offering, and received one in the mail today that was very, very appreciative. And those that have been going online and to our website, which is www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org, and connecting the donate button there and giving online through PayPal. We certainly appreciate that. But you can go to our website too and get our mailing address, and you can mail a gift, a love gift, offering, a tithe. You can mail it that direction, take it through the snail mail, and that is also very much appreciated. So I just wanted to say that and get that out of the way. Not to say that that's not important, but to say it right up front, because we're certainly appreciative of that. We're putting together our finances to get this month's lease taken care of. And of course, we've got the electric, water, other utility bills and stuff to deal with too. But thank you so much. I want to go ahead and jump right into for Ezra and discuss some of these things. Now, if you remember last week, we had just gone through the what I entitled, I think it was something about the woman, the beast, and I forget what the last part was. Nevertheless, we went through and we saw this whole vision. We got the interpretation of the vision last week, and then it brought us to where we are in Ezra chapter 13. And so in Ezra chapter 13, we know that Ezra has been going through a process, and he has been he's been told to fast on several occasions for 7 days. And then after every 7 days, then he gets a revelation, and he gets a visitation by this angel Uriel, or he is inquiring about these things, and Yahweh begins to speak to him directly. And in the midst of all that, he's getting these visions about the things that are to be, the things that are coming, but also to give enlightenment about his current circumstances that he's been going through. And his very heart is being revealed, and he's been put to the test by going through these visions. In fact, the vision of the woman was she appears, and his heart goes out to her and helps walk her through the circumstances, to say, even your circumstances, though as grave as they are, and as how you are mourning, even that is not even as great as what's happened to Yah's people and to Zion. And and so in that he finds that he passes a test, and the test of his heart, the test of his humility, the test that is his heart is in alignment with the things of God. And if you're joining us for the first time and you haven't heard all of the series of Ezra, I would recommend go back through the series of Ezra to find out who Ezra is and some of the things that he's been going through. And Ezra, we know in Scripture, is that he was a contemporary of Nehemiah, and he was at the time given charge to oversee the rebuilding of the second temple. And so we know that in this time here, it's in that period of where there's not quite a second temple. It's in process, but it is also that which we would kind of lend in as that second temple period leading up to the time of Mashiach. And so it's actually really exciting. And these visions that he's seen, like we discovered last week, these visions are the same. Some of these visions are the same as what Daniel saw. Wow. So I think that's really huge. And as you know, what did Daniel see? Well, you have to go back to Daniel chapter 7. But the thing is that those things were sealed up for Daniel, and he was not given the interpretation of those, but Ezra was given the interpretation. And that's where we were coming out of last week. And so going into this week, one of the things that we left off with is that his community didn't know what had happened to him, that he was out there in the field. He's out there in the middle of the field, and the people in the city say, "Where have you been? You have abandoned us. Where are you going? You're the only prophet left. You're the only one that's still around, and you're separating yourself from us. And we are very discouraged by that. And we don't want you to leave us." And they wept. They wept with a loud voice, it says over in chapter 12 for Ezra. And yet Ezra, being, of course, of the line of Zadok, in the priestly role, tells them, "Oh, be of good comfort, and don't be heavy, oh house of Yaakov." He just tells them, "Look, I'm only out here for a temporary period of time, but I'm going through this journey. So let me walk through this journey, and then I'll be able to return." So in chapter 12, verse 50, it says, "So the people went their way into the city, like as I commanded them, but I remained still in the field 7 days, as the angel commanded me, and did eat only in those days as the flowers of the field, and had my meat of the herbs." So there we go. This is Ezra. He's only eating plants for food. So kind of like the Daniel fast, like we talked about before. But it's another 7-day period that he's going to be in the field. And in chapter 13, here we go. We're going to jump right into it. And it says, "And it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night. And lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that a man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven." Now stop right there. First off, it's been 7 days. So he had to wait 7 more days. Notice that there's a pattern. There's a 7 days of 2 weeks of it. There was a 7 days of fasting, and then a revelation. A 7 days of fasting, then a revelation. Then there were 7 days of eating herbs and a revelation. Now there's 7 more days of eating herbs and the flowers of the field and a revelation. So it seems like there's a pattern here, perhaps, and I've mentioned this before, is that perhaps this is a pattern for us when we're really needing to get our minds and our lives and our hearts in alignment with God, because the cares and the worries of this world so bear down on us, and all the frustrations. We see stuff going on around us. There's so many challenges, and just, with making our making ends meet, and it can be a big drain, and it can be a challenge in our relationship with the Lord. And so maybe this is a pattern for us to be able to follow, saying, Father, help me get my heart, my mind, my thoughts, my purposes back in alignment with you. I'm not saying that he ever was out of alignment, but he was being put to the test by following these instructions and to seeing it through, and yet rewarded for it. We all like the rewards, but there is a process for getting that reward. And yet here at the end of another 7 days, he sees this man, a strong, that's growing strong. It says wax strong. So this man that's waxing strong, he sees coming out of the sea. Now, there's a metaphor, there's a Hebrew idiom for the sea, and that Hebrew idiom for the sea can be the mass of humanity. So coming out of the mass of humanity, there comes a man who is waxing strong, becoming more and more strong. And who's he coming with? It says, with the thousands of heaven. Wow. Well, that reminds me of a couple different things that I see within Scripture, like Yeshua riding on the white horse, and those that are riding on horses, white horses behind him, like the thousands of heaven. So, and then it says, and when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth fails when it feels the fire. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the heavens to subdue the man that came out of the sea. All right. Okay. Let's go back. Let's take a look at this. We have seen this picture of Yeshua in the book of Revelation. And yet this is Ezra talking about it. So let's pull some pieces together from the book of Revelation of what we see as a description as the man that is looking stronger and stronger. Another way you might say that a man that is waxing stronger with the thousands of heaven would also be a way of saying that this man that is come up out of the sea with the thousands of heaven is that he's getting closer and closer. So the image of him is bigger and bigger, or stronger and stronger. It's another way maybe we could look at that. But so he's approaching. Yeah, and as you approach, you see his great strength. I don't know, that's something else too. And said that, Linda. Okay, so let's go over to, I got my finger over in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. You might look that there in just a moment, but I want you to go with me over into 3 different places in the book of Revelation. And the first one in the book of Revelation, okay, verse 16 of Revelation chapter 1, and it says, and in his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in its strength. Okay, there's the first one. And then I want you to jump next over to chapter 19 of the book of Revelation. Chapter 19. So we're getting a picture of the image of what maybe Ezra is seeing. Okay, so that's Revelation chapter 19. No, let's jump up to verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat upon it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and wages war. Keep that in mind. He wages war, right? And his eyes are a flame of fire, and upon his head are many diadems. And he has a name written upon himself which no one knows except himself. Well, at this point in time, it's very interesting. He's only called the man. He's only called the man. And it said something else. And when he turned his countenance to look. So this, we're describing his countenance to look, and his eyes are a flame of fire, and upon his head are many diadems, and he has a name written upon him which no one knows except himself. And he is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of El, or El Elyon, or the Word of Yah. And the armies which are in heaven. So here's the thousands that are with him. And the armies which are in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, were following him on white horses. And okay, now we got to verse 15 where we wanted to go. And from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may smite the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God the Almighty. Okay. All right. And remember over in Psalm 2 where it says that he rules the nations with the iron rod. Just want to throw that in as well. Okay. All right. So that's that one. There's one more verse, though. Let's go on to verse 21. And I saw verse 21, and the rest were killed with a sword which came from the mouth of him who sat upon the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. Oh, keep dokes. Oh, my. That has a direct reference over to Matthew 24. We talked about the eagles or the vultures or the carrions that were eating, that were gathering. And that goes with that verse. We talked about that last week. Okay. All right. Don't want to sidetrack too much, but that was just we're connecting dots here. Okay. Let's go back here to Ezra chapter 13. For Ezra chapter 13. And it says, and whensoever the voice, so the voice went out of his mouth. So think about that. What's coming out of his mouth? All they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth fails when it feels the fire. It's an interesting way of saying when the earth burns up, when it feels the fire, when the fire burns the earth. Okay. And after this, I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number. In other words, there's too many men to count out of number. I lost count. It's kind of like the stars of the heaven or the sands of the sea kind of thing. There's like so many of them from the four winds of the heaven. So this multitude gathered against Yeshua. Oh, did I say that already? Did I spoil it about the man? No, you know who the man is. Okay, so in other words, these men, those multitude of men, these armies of men are gathered from the four winds of the earth. They all came together. It's as if there was something that unified them all together against the man who came up out of the sea. And with one purpose, to subdue him, the man who came up out of the sea. That's verse 5. And then going on, it says, but I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. But I would have seen the region or place where out the hill was graven, and I could not. And after this, I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet dared to fight. Oh, my goodness. So think about that. So I want you to picture, it's not that Yeshua like fled to a mountain, but it's like there's a mountain that was set apart for the man. Think about, where is a set apart mountain for the man? And I can only think I can think of two different places, and one out of the two is correct. I think of Mount Sinai, where Yah came down upon the mountain and gave the Torah, and then there's one other place where the fire fell. Remember the upper room, Acts chapter 2? And the 120 were gathered in the upper room, and they were praying on Shavuot. And what happened? Fire came down on the mountain. Now, if you connect the dots over to Mount Sinai, there was all of the lightnings and the thunders and all of that going on over there. And so on Mount Zion, where the 120 were gathered, and fire fell on the 120. The fire fell on the 120. And here we see that the man goes, and this mountain, Ezra's like, I don't recognize it. I'm trying to get the picture of this. Do you see the picture of this? He's trying to say, wait a minute, I don't recognize the mountain, because could it be that Mount Zion has transformed itself? I'm just kind of, go with me. Maybe it's a rabbit hole, maybe it's a rabbit trail. Maybe it's whatever you want to call it. But it says here, this very interesting, but I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. Now, today, if you go to Mount Zion, it's a mountain, but it's not like a great mountain, other than the significance of Mount Zion is greater than any other mountain on the face of the earth. It's greater than K2 or Everest or McKinley or Denali or any of these huge mountains that we're aware of, Pikes Peak or whatever you might come to mind. And yet here it says that this is significant. It's a great mountain. It's significant. And when you think of Mount Zion, if you've ever been to Jerusalem and you think about all the roads and all the stuff around it, it's like, it seems to be one that would be easy just to, it's not like you need great equipment, like particular vehicles or whatever to get up upon it. And that's why I'm thinking, has there been a geological shift that would cause Zion to be greater than any mountain physically in the area? I don't know, but he's seeing something that makes it really significant. Okay, I think you're with me on it. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. But after this I beheld, and lo, all they which had gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet dared fight. So two different things. He is magnificent in his presence that it frightened them. And two, the place where he is at was significantly magnificent, ominous, that made them sore afraid and yet dared fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. Well, I kind of spoiled it when I went over there to Revelation, didn't I? Because we know what his secret weapon is. And I think about the battles that are going on in the world today. We're talking about hypersonic weapons. We're talking about these missiles that are directed by satellite, by GPS, by specific marked coordinates, by laser, by that which can be carried by man, that's put on tanks, that's on jets, on satellites, all these different things. And yet he neither lifts up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. Okay, now that's like Shakespearean language. Tempest. Tempest. What are tempests? They're storms. Yeah, I was one of those characters in that Shakespearean play, The Tempest, when I was in 5th grade. And that's how I learned what the word tempest meant. It's a storm. And so think about the fiery breath. I'm thinking about Acts chapter 2. Now, in Acts chapter 2, we have a people that have been set apart waiting for the Most High. They've been waiting there for 10 days. And when the fire fell, they were not consumed because their hearts were prepared. And now it says, out of his mouth. So what came out? I'm thinking, what was the fire that came? We always like to say, well, that was the Holy Spirit. Well, yeah, the Spirit of the living God. You could say that is like a fire, like a wind, like you could put those together, and yet a blast of fire out of his lips, a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests, and they were all mixed together. All right, so it's kind of like the first Indiana Jones movie, you know, when they open up the Ark of the Covenant and that plasma power comes out of the Ark of the Covenant, and all of the NAZIs. Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I'm gonna use that. I'm just gonna tone it down a little bit. And they're all consumed by the plasma burst. All right, just think about that coming out of Yeshua's mouth, the man who came up out of the sea. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude, which had prepared to fight, and burned them up, everyone, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. And when I saw this, I was afraid. Such drama. Such drama when it's written out in such Shakespearean language, isn't it? But I love the language there. It's so full. But behold, to be or not to be. Okay, so now Ezra's like, yo, dude, that is frightening. That's like shaking me to the core. And he just saw that it was just like that, in just a moment of a time, that all of these armies that had gathered up, and they were shaking in their boots when they didn't, yet they still felt like they had to fight against Yeshua. Oh my goodness. And yet Yeshua opens his mouth, and it says, remember in the book of Revelation, that is the sword, which is the word of God, that consumed them. And they were burnt and turned to dust, to ashes. There was a smell of smoke in the air. Yeah, Linda, Mount Moriah. Wow. The all-consuming fire. We know why he's called the all-consuming fire. I'm going to look that up. We're going to go in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 here in a second. But over in Hebrews chapter 12. Yeah. Verse 25. See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if those did not escape when they refused him, who warned them on earth, much less shall we escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven. And his voice shook the earth then. And his voice shook the earth then. Right? Remember? Exodus chapter 19. His voice shook the earth then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heaven. And this expression, yet once more, denotes the removing of those things which can be shaken as of created things, in order that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we receive a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us show gratitude by which we may offer to Yah an acceptable service with reverence and awe. For our God, for our Yah, is a consuming fire. I think that's really sobering when we think about that. So now let's keep this in mind, because when we think about how in verse 4 that whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth fails when it feels the fire. So I want you to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3 with me. And if you go to verse 11, let's look at it here. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 11. For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua the Messiah. Or what is that foundation? Okay, so I've said this many times before, but if you've not been walking this out, and there's some Hebrew idioms that are very important for us to know. There's a Hebrew idiom that says that the Torah is also known as the way, the truth, and the life. Now, remember, Yeshua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so that kind of, when the Pharisees heard that, they got upset, because he's saying he's equating himself with the Torah. Well, they know what he's meaning. But those of us in the 21st century kind of lose its meaning when we don't understand Hebrew idioms, and that Hebrew idiom of the way, the truth, and the life. Yeshua says, I am the Torah. That's what it means. So for no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Yeshua HaMashiach, also known as the Torah. And the Torah also is the Word that became flesh. See how those idioms connect? Now, if any man builds upon the foundation, what's the foundation? Well, we just read that. With gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it. For the day will show it. What do we just think about here in Ezra? The day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. Well, where does the fire come from? We just read that in Ezra, for Ezra. And we read that in Revelation, didn't we? If any man's work, which he has built upon it remains, if any man's work which he has built upon it remains, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as through fire. So, do you not know that you are a temple of El Elyon, and that the Spirit of El dwells in you? If any man destroys the temple of Yah, Yah will destroy him, for the temple of Yah is holy, and that is what you are. Let no man deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in his age, let him become foolish, that he may become wise. So you can read the rest of that for yourselves, but I think we see a picture here. So we got a twofold picture going on here, is that if we're not building upon the foundation of Yeshua the Messiah as the Torah, in other words, we're just building upon an image of Yeshua as the New Testament image, so to speak, then we may not get that full foundation. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's going to get burned up. But when we're building upon Yeshua, who is the way, the truth, and the life, who is the Word of God, the Word became flesh, that is the Torah, that then we have a sure foundation, and then we can build upon that, and then we have gold, silver, and precious stones that will not burn up. And just to think that when he speaks, then there's something that can come out of his mouth, and it will consume everything. All right. We haven't even got to the interpretation of this, because there's an interpretation of this, but let's move on a little bit further on. And it says, verse 12, afterward I saw I the same man come down from the mountain and call unto him another peaceable multitude. Wow. So, this multitude of these armies that are now consumed. And then this man calls out to another peaceable multitude. And it says, and there came such people unto him, whereof some were glad, some were sorry. Some of them were bound, and some brought of them that were offered. Then was I sick through great fear, and I awakened. So, wow, that was the end of the vision, the end of the dream. It's at the end of the 7 days, and he just saw all of that. And again, just like last week when he had this vision, it put him in great fear, like Daniel. And so it's these things, and it's like he's counted worthy to see these things, and yet the amount of the strength of the soul it takes to endure it will literally zaps that strength and that energy. And we need a supernatural strength within our spirit in order to be encouraged. Just think about what he just went through. Verse 14 goes on, it says, you have showed your servant these wonders from the beginning, and have counted me worthy that you should receive my prayer. It's like, you listened to me. I wanted to know more. I wanted to put the pieces together. I wanted to know that there was hope that was coming forward, and yet, and you counted me worthy. And it's like, now, verse 15, but you got to show me the interpretation of the dream, because that was, whoa, like off the charts, and my mind is blown. Okay, that's my twist to that. And he says, for as I conceived in my understanding, woe unto them that shall be left in those days, and much more woe unto them that are not left behind. Now, that's a very strange way to say, look, dude, whoa, like, yikes, anybody that's left for those days, that's quite a reveal. But what about those that are not left behind? Now, it says not left behind. Now, I'm not talking about that series, the book Left Behind. No, not at all, because that's got it backwards. Those that are not left behind, in other words, think about behind as thinking about as in terms of linear history, and those that are in the beginning as opposed to those that are in the hinter part. And so those that are in the hinter part would be those that are left behind. So those that are left for the behind days, or the hintermost days. Does that make sense? That's the language that it's talking about. So he says, woe unto them that are not left behind. In other words, those that do not go through this experience, that it's kind of sad because of the tremendous signs and wonders and miracles and the power of seeing the man who comes up out of the sea. Yeah, I agree, Linda. It is bizarre to think that the wicked will still try to fight Yah. The Yah of the universe. Exactly. Now, says now, verse 18, now I understand the things that were laid up for the latter days, which shall happen unto them, to those that are left behind, or to those that are left for the hintermost parts of those days, the latter days. And so if you are still in dispensational theology, and you've got a pre, mid, post rapture mentality, you need to kind of separate yourself from that and the Left Behind series, just saying, thinking about those that are left in those days. In other words, because in this whole story, we don't see that there is an escape by anybody. There is just those who go to war to try to subdue Yeshua. Think about that. They want to try to subdue Yeshua. They think in their military might they can do it. That blows my mind to think. But there's people that honestly think that, even though they'd be afraid, rightly so, but they're not going to ever do it. And yet there's still others that are waiting. And therefore, in other words, they're still contemporaries of those that were slaughtered by Yeshua because they dare to subdue him. And it says, therefore are they come into great perils and many necessities, like as these dreams declare. So, yeah, I'm thinking about this, is that if we're really that generation, he's telling us about great perils and many necessities. In other words, many necessities, like many of these things that need to be fulfilled. It could also be speaking about what are the things that we like to have now, but we might not have in the culmination of everything. But nevertheless, it goes on, it says, yes, it's easier for him that is in danger to come into these things than to pass away as a cloud out of the world and not to see the things that happen in the last days. Did you hear what he just said? And this is a really huge encouragement. Man, I got to get on through this because we're running out of time. But he says, it is easier for him that is in danger to come into these things than to pass away as a cloud out of the world and not see these things that happen in the last days. In other words, he's just saying, look, it's more beneficial to weather these storms than it is for those who live their lives and they go through these lives and then they pass away, because that's what happens in life. But we have a termination point in life and we pass away like a cloud. And in other words, there's a blessing to this, to live it through, greater than one who dies in Messiah but doesn't see these things. Isn't that an interesting way to say it? And he answered unto me and said, so he's pondering this before Yahweh, and Yahweh says in the end of verse 20, and he answered unto me and said, the interpretation of the vision shall I show you, and I'll open unto you the things that you have required, whereas you have spoken of them that are left behind. So those that are living in the hindermost part of time at the coming of Yeshua. This is the interpretation. He that shall endure the peril at that time has kept himself. They that be fallen into danger are such as have works and faith toward El Shaddai. Know that this, therefore, that they which are left behind, those that are living in the hindermost parts of this era, are more blessed than they that be dead. I mean, he says it bluntly. That's the interpretation. So, you and me, let's make it our utmost desire to live. Let's make it our utmost desire to have the works and the faithfulness toward El Shaddai, so that we can be counted in this time more blessed than they that be dead. Now, those that have passed on have received a great reward and a great peace and great comfort. For to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. But here it says, because of these things, we're more blessed. And I'm thinking, okay, so Father, preserve us from sickness, preserve us from sudden accidental death, preserve us from the attacks of the enemy, from known and unknown sources, those that would come direct onto us and those that would try to blindside us. Protect us, Father. This is the meaning of the vision. Whereas you saw a man coming up, or in other words, ascending from the midst of the sea, the same as he whom El Elyon has kept a great season. So he's saying that El Elyon has kept this man. So the Most High has kept this man. He's preserved him for his return. The time of his return is the perfect return, the returning point to come and get his bride. And he kept him for this certain point of time. And it says, and get this, well, who is this man? The same is he whom El Elyon has kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature. That kind of sounds like he's preserved this man for a great season, which by his own self, El Elyon's own self, shall deliver his creature, his creation, his mankind, and his creation. He's to preserve it, to keep it, to save it, to bring forth the salvation, which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are left behind. And going on, it says, whereas you saw that out of his mouth there came a blast of wind and fire and storm, and that he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but that the rushing in of him destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation. Behold, the days come. So, yeah, the days come when El Elyon will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. So think about this. At that appropriate time, he comes, the world gathers against him to subdue him. And so El Elyon will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. Well, who is El Elyon that delivers him? Well, I think we read about him back in the book of Revelation in 3 different scriptures, 3 different witnesses at that point in time. And he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. In other words, the earth has thought that they had more time. The earth, the people of the earth thought that they had been able to defy the scriptures. The earth felt like they had everything going their way to defeat even the prophecies of Yah, and to their astonishment, he comes. And it says, one shall undertake to fight. Now, okay, so this goes back to, remember in Matthew 24, where it says that kingdom shall rise against kingdom, nation against nation. And it says literally ethnos against ethnos, like one ethnic group against another ethnic group. You know how we see that the powers that be try to pit one group against another, where it says, and one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, one realm against another. And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen, which I showed you before. And then shall my son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle they have one against another. So it's like when Yeshua ascends, even though all the people are fighting against themselves, in all the different ways they may be fighting against themselves, they're going to stop fighting against each other, and then they're going to unite. And it says in verse 34, and an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together as you saw them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand upon the top of Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be showed to all men, being prepared and built, like as you saw the hill, graven without hands. And this, my son, shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest, or they're fallen into the storm, and shall lay upon them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which we're going to go over that in a second, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor and by the Torah, which is like unto me. Okay. All right. We're going to pause right there. All right. I think it's pretty understanding that you have the multitudes on the earth are fighting against each other. Yeshua comes. I don't like that. And so they gather against him. Yeshua goes upon Mount Zion. They gather together against him. And it's innumerable. It's without number. And they want to destroy him by fighting. But he destroys them. How does he destroy them? And they have the wicked inventions. Okay, we went through the technology and all the different things, even AI to use the weapons, weapons-based artificial intelligence, or artificial intelligence using the weapon-based system so they could think about why AI is being used. Think about that. So that in quantum physics, to be able to, they've talked about Chat GPT actually going beyond 5,000 times higher than man's intelligence. That's where I just listened to a commentary on that today. Think about your brain, and then 5,000 times more powerful. And that's where AI is right now. So if they put AI to modern weaponry to use against Yeshua, that's how they think they can win. I don't know. It's just a thought right there. And so but when Yeshua begins to speak, remember, he's a consuming fire, and out of his mouth comes this flame, this storm, this blast of wind. And what's it do? It shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor. In other words, his word shall reveal their evil thoughts, and then those thoughts, because they are not aligned with Torah, will literally consume them. The word will destroy them. The word will judge them. The word will be like a fire that they cannot withstand. And it says they become dust. And there's a smell of smoke. It literally burns them up. Crispy critters. Gone. And it says he didn't do anything. It says without labor. He just opens his mouth. The Torah, the living Torah, opens his mouth. Because and he shall destroy them without labor by the Torah, which is like unto me. And whereas you saw that he gathered another peaceful multitude unto them. And I'm out of time. Well, we're going to go in next week and find out who this peaceable multitude is, and because there's a lot more to describe in them. So thank you for being part of Walking in Spirit of Truth. It's another cliffhanger, guys. Hate to leave you there. I really wanted to get through that this week, but come back with me next week. We're going to continue this journey together and really dig in some more, because this is just so encouraging when we recognize what we've been preserved for and why Torah is so important to believers in Yeshua the Messiah, and that it doesn't expire, and just come back next week. Just remember, the Torah is the word. It's not Talmud. It's not some Orthodox belief system. It is the word. It's the living word in us that he gave to us from the beginning. All right. So there we go. We'll see you next time. Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.